Okay, we'll start with this. Well, the former WBO lightweight champion of Brazil, Rose Vellante, is going to be returning to action early next month against Alana Leoparda. And this is not going to be a lightweight contest. It appears that Rose is moving up in weight for this match. Who knows? She may campaign as a super lightweight from here on out, making the division that much deeper and that much more interesting for it in the process. Also featured on this card is Brazil's own Danila Ramos. That's the same Danila Ramos that fought with Katharina Sanders. That's the same Danila Ramos that fought with Elhem Mekhaled. She's going to be taking on Simone de Silva. That is the same Simone de Silva that was dispatched by Amanda Serrano in her last outing on DAZN. Just back to Rose Vellante. What is her next fight? You know, Rose hasn't had a fight since she lost the WBO lightweight title to Katie Taylor. That was in March of last year. And in that way, it's been over a year, well over 12 months, since Rose Vellante, former WBO lightweight champion Rose Vellante, has seen any action. And you don't want to read too much into how Rose looked against Katie. Understand that not just anybody, not everybody, is going to walk in there and do to Rose what Katie did to Rose, as Katie Taylor beat Rose with her speed and her volume punching, her angles, and her fancy feet. Essentially, everybody ain't Katie Taylor, and everybody ain't going to do to Rose what Katie Taylor did to Rose. Rose Vellante really is one of the stronger punchers in the lightweight division, and I've no doubts that that power is going to carry. It's going to carry over into the super lightweight division. If Rose makes it through this fight, secures the W against Leoparda, I don't imagine that she's going to return to the lightweight division because the situation there really hasn't changed. Katie Taylor has effectively bottlenecked that entire weight class. She is still in possession of all the world titles there. Rose stands a better chance of becoming a champion in the super lightweight division as opposed to the lightweight division. The super lightweight division, where there are 4 active reigning world champions there for her to challenge, for her to fight. Now, don't misunderstand this. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not telling you that it's easy, that it would be easy to pry away a world title from Mary McGee, from Kali Reese, from Christina Lienarda II, or Chantel Cameron. I'm not telling you that it would be easy. I'm telling you she stands a better chance with them than she does against Katie in a rematch. Moreover, she stands a better chance of landing a world title fight, a world title opportunity at 140 than she does at 135. At 135, she's just one of many girls that are calling out Katie Taylor's name. But at 140, you know, if she plays the cards right, she might actually get the chance to position herself to fight for a world title.
She has value.
We know that Rose lost to Katie, but remember what I told you. Everybody ain't gonna go in there and do to Rose what Katie did to Rose. Anybody that squares off against Rose now is essentially squaring off against the common opponent of Katie Taylor's. And in that way, Rose would serve as a litmus test, a familiar name, who's only ever lost one fight. There's no shame in losing to Katie Taylor, but better still, she has value, and for what it's worth, she actually has a very fan-friendly style and a decent-sized punch. I think she'll fit right in the super lightweight division, and there are interesting matches, very interesting matches against other punchers like herself there for her. You know, Christina, she's a puncher. Kali, she's a puncher.
Mary McGee is too.
We all know Chantel Cameron's a puncher, a very well-educated, well-versed, well-rounded puncher, but yeah, Chantel Cameron, she's a puncher. And the virtue of Rose Vellante integrating herself into this weight class is more or less the same kind of dynamic that we're seeing in this upcoming Conor Benn versus Sebastian Formella fight. We know that Sebastian, he went 12 rounds with the very durable, very game, very aggressive Sean Porter. In that way, the virtue of fighting Sebastian is testing your own mettle against a common opponent with an elite level fighter. It's more or less the virtue of fighting Rose at this point, who's on the rebound, on the mend, and making her way back to the sport of boxing. So on December 5th, keep your eyes peeled for Volante versus Leoparda. In other news, per tweet from Michael Benson, Terence Crawford says, "We may have a disagreement now, but we're going to get it figured out. I can't bash Bob Arum when I know deep down in my heart that Bob is a really good dude." And he really did try everything to get these fights I was asking for. And
You believe that?
there's a point of contention, has been a point of contention, as to whether or not Bob Arum did all he could to get Terence Crawford the Manny Pacquiao fight.
It's one of them.
Back when Manny Pacquiao was on the top-ranked side of things. There are those out there who believe that Bob Arum killed this fight, that he prevented Terence Crawford from having it, misled everyone, and I've never agreed with that contention. I've never agreed with that opinion because the facts say otherwise. There is evidence to the contrary. There is evidence that Bob Arum did, in fact, try to make that fight, but there was resistance from Team Pacquiao, from the Pacquiao side of things, and that resistance goes all the way back to 2016. After the third Pacquiao versus Bradley fight, their third installment, which took place earlier that year, in June of 2016, Michael Conks, Pacquiao's trusted advisor at that time, was quoted as saying, "If Pacquiao returns, Crawford is not a thought and never was." He was quoted as saying, "We have not agreed on anything yet. He has been very busy with his senatorial duties," Conks told scribe Mike Woods. "I will not make comments until authorized by Manny. We have not agreed to anything, and if we fight again, Crawford is not even a thought and never was." Earlier this year, Conks personally reached out to Adrian Broner to discuss the idea of a fight in April. Now, this is from 2016. In 2016, Team Pacquiao was more receptive to an Adrian Broner fight than they were to a fight with their stablemate, Terence Crawford.
And is it a coincidence that he eventually ended up fighting Broner?
Understand that this is in June of 2016, late June. Manny Pacquiao was still on the top-ranked side of things, but while he was there, Michael Conks reached out to a PBC fighter as opposed to looking into making a fight with his stablemate, Terence Crawford. The following year, in July, Manny Pacquiao is upset by Jeff Horn. Jeff Horn effectively takes Manny Pacquiao's WBO title. Later on that year, after that fight, in December, Freddie Roach was quoted as saying, "Arum is pushing for Pacquiao to fight Crawford. Fight concerns me." He was quoted as saying, "Arum wants Pacquiao to fight Crawford. I'm a little bit concerned about that fight. It's a tough fight. Crawford's a young guy coming up and so forth. And Manny probably has seen his best days behind him. But I will still train him and get him ready for that fight, if that does happen. And they're pushing for it, so it might. But it's the same situation there. It's a different generation. We've got to still compete with the younger generation, and I think Miguel will be able to do that for sure." Miguel, as in
Miguel Cotto.
who has absolutely nothing to do with this story. But better still, you heard it right there in plain English, folks. That came from Freddie Roach, you understand. Not Terence Crawford, not Bob Arum. That came from Freddie Roach.
Training Manny at the time.
I'm gonna ask you guys a common sense question. Do you remember how Manny looked against Jeff Horn? Do you remember what people were saying the day after the fight? That, yeah, Manny might have won. Maybe he got robbed, but he looked his age. He looked his age against Jeff Horn. Now, what the hell makes you guys think that the Pacquiao people would have entertained a fight with Terence Crawford having been upset by Jeff Horn? You know they never gave that guy a rematch, even though Jeff wanted one. I don't know why, seeing as he's the one who won the fight, but better still.
They didn't want it.
Why would you think the Pacquiao people were open to a Terence Crawford fight when they weren't even open to a Jeff Horn rematch?
How soon they forget.
Inside.
Quick hands, so what?
Yeah.
What did he do to Jeff Horn?
He beat Jeff Horn.
No.
A lot of people think he, come on, he beat Jeff Horn. He beat Jeff Horn.
No. It was a draw. What did he do?
He
round by round, what did he do?
He almost had him out.
In one round.
Yeah,
round by round.
But he had him out.
12 rounds. No, he didn't have him out.
He was just
He
about
did
out.
it in one
He was
round.
like this.
In one round.
Yeah.
Can you count?
Yes.
Fool, can you count?
Yes. There's 12 rounds, I know.
Okay. So what's 1 minus 12?
11.
So explain 11 more times what the fuck he did.
You think Jeff Horn won all those 11 rounds?
Jeff Horn barely did shit. Manny Pacquiao didn't do a goddamn thing.
Yeah.
On God, he didn't do a goddamn thing. Nothing.
Nothing at all.
Jeff Horn was like this.
Yeah. Yeah, he was in it. He roughed him up.
Duck.
Well, I guess everybody conveniently forgot how it is that Manny looked against Jeff Horn and what people were saying after the fight. So, Manny loses his title to Jeff Horn, controversially I might add, in 2017. 2018 rolls around. April 24th of 2018, Michael Conks is quoted as saying Crawford is not on Pacquiao's radar. Pacquiao's camp prefers Lomachenko over Terence Crawford, the other pound-for-pound star who's likely to cross paths with the Filipino icon in the near future. Michael Conks, Pacquiao's advisor, told Filipino sports writers last week that they want no part of Crawford. He was quoted as saying, "Styles make fights. In my opinion, the Terence Crawford fight is a bad style for Manny. That type of fighter is similar to Floyd Mayweather. We've always had trouble with those type of fighters," Conks said. "It's no secret that Pacquiao has had difficulty fighting technically inclined boxers, and Crawford happens to be one of the best such fighters in the planet right now." The article goes on to say that Conks insists Pacquiao versus Crawford is not in their immediate plans. Terence Crawford is going to do whatever it takes for him to win. That's just him. He's a talented fighter. He can switch back and forth. It's just the style is not for Manny. I'm not saying he can't be successful, but why risk it when we have other opportunities? Conks continued. For Conks, Lomachenko, the former featherweight and super featherweight champion, is the much better matchup for Pacquiao. Did you guys forget that there were rumblings, talks of a Pacquiao-Lomachenko fight at some kind of a catchweight? Did you forget about that?
You know, Manny never ended up fighting either of those guys.
You know what he did do? In March of 2018, it was reported that Manny Pacquiao had left Top Rank. You fast forward a few months to that same year in October, and who does he sign with? He signs with Al Heyman in pursuit of a Floyd Mayweather Jr. rematch. Now, we know he didn't actually get that rematch, but you know what he did get? He got an Adrian Broner fight. Adrian Broner. That's the guy that Michael Conks reached out to in 2016 while Manny was still with Top Rank. Is that a coincidence or what?
Yeah, that's something.
Now, I want you guys to understand something. This is not about vilifying Manny. In all actuality, this really isn't even about Manny. This is about whether or not Bob Arum actually made an earnest effort to get Terence Crawford a Pacquiao fight. All the evidence says yes. I mean, why was Freddie Roach saying that Bob Arum was pushing for the fight? And why did Michael Conks, Manny Pacquiao's then advisor, keep shooting that proposition down?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you know more about it than Freddie Roach?
There are a lot of people out there that are quite comfortable pushing a false narrative that Bob, he didn't try to get Terence Crawford that fight. He actually blocked that fight. There are a lot of people that choose to believe this. And the question is why? Where did this come from? You want to know where it came from? I'll tell you where it came from. It came from Marcos Villegas of Fight Hub, who for some reason chose to misrepresent Bob Arum's comments.
Would you have reservations if he said, "Next fight, I want Terence Crawford"?
Well, I killed the fight. Yeah.
So you wouldn't want that for Manny?
No, because I would know how it would end.
This interview is from January of 2019 in reference to a potential Terence Crawford versus Manny Pacquiao fight. This is after Manny had already lost to Jeff Horn, but before Manny took Keith Thurman's WBA title later on that year.
Which I've no doubts changed Bob Arum's mind.
Since Manny, later on that year, won that WBA title from what was an unbeaten fighter, an unbeaten champion, who's what, like 10 years younger than Manny? Better still, for whatever reason, Marcos Villegas chose to misrepresent Bob Arum's comments because he was asking Bob about making the fight.
If he would.
You can hear that in plain English.
Would you have reservations if he said, "Next fight, I want Terence Crawford"?
Well, I killed the fight. Yeah.
So you wouldn't want that for Manny?
No, because I would know how it would end.
There are those out there who want to perpetuate this narrative that somehow Bob Arum stopped that fight from happening, that he never tried to deliver that fight to Terence Crawford, that if anything, he guided him away from it, and nothing could be further from the truth. And this house of cards was built upon a misrepresentation of Bob Arum's comments on the part of Marcos Villegas, because all the evidence is to the contrary. Freddie Roach said it way back when. That fight might happen because they're pushing for it, and what resistance the fight received came from the Pacquiao side of things, the Pacquiao people, Michael Conks. There were other fights that they were open to. They were open to a Broner fight. They were open to a Vasil Lomachenko fight. But what they weren't open to, apparently, was a Terence Crawford fight. And I reiterate, none of this is said to vilify Manny Pacquiao at this stage and at that stage. 1 or 2 years ago, however you want to put it. Manny Pacquiao earned the right to end his career and proceed in it as he so chooses, as he pleases. He is a veteran and a legend of the sport. This is not about him. This is about Bob. The reason that these false narratives are being levied against Bob Arum is because what these guys want you to believe is that Bob failed Terence Crawford as a promoter, and nothing could be further from the truth. In 2018, Terrence Crawford had the most watched fight of any combat sport. Not just boxing, mixed martial arts as well. This year, he had one of the most watched fights.
Past weekend.
Neither one of those two fights were against high-profile guys, high-profile opponents. In that way, Bob Arum has done his job in promoting Terrence Crawford. If we're sitting here today asking for Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. welterweight unification match, it's because Bob Arum did his job. He's the other half of that super fight. And it wouldn't be a super fight had Bob Arum not done his job.
He's still out of line for those comments, though.
I haven't changed my position on that. Bob Arum has no need to air his grievances this way, and all that does is reflect poorly on him. But as far as promoting Crawford, oh yeah, he's done that. And as far as trying to get Crawford the fights that he wanted, the fights that he needed.
Freddie Roach said they were pushing for Pacquiao.
And didn't they reach out to Danny Garcia?
Huh?
Didn't they reach out to Keith Thurman? Before Keith Thurman lost his belt to Manny Pacquiao, didn't they reach out to that guy? And isn't Keith Thurman the one who admitted that himself on camera? This is what Terrence Crawford's talking about, after all. Bob Arum made an earnest attempt to get fights with those fighters for Terrence Crawford. But Bob, he can't control what those fighters decide to do. He can't make them fight Terrence Crawford. There are those out there who want to perpetuate this false narrative that Bob failed Terrence as a promoter to make Bob look bad so that Al Heyman can look good. When it's Al Heyman that's freezing Terrence Crawford out of these fights. This ain't about cleaning up Bob Arum's comments. This is about getting to the truth.